a lot of right-wing, economic-friendly, the so-called neoliberals are coming to power in Latin America, in Argentina, Peru, even in Brazil, they're in power. That's simply because the left was in power there. So wherever you have incumbents, there's a huge anti-incumbency wave going on. And deglobalization is something which is now a fact of life, which is the fact that if you look at like in the book I divide the eras. There's the BC era, which is before the crisis, and the AC era after the crisis. Yeah. One of the big changes there which has taken place is there's been a huge rise in protectionist measures across the world. And India, ironically, is at the forefront of that. So the WTO and some independent think tanks in Europe keep a tabulation of which countries have instituted how many protectionist measures. And the country which leads that pack in this decade is India. But in general, protectionist measures across the world have increased a lot because governments are now using whatever they can to try and help their, or so-called help, their vested interests. And those vested interests enter much more power than the consumer, who eventually lose when you have too much protection. And trade volumes have collapsed. Yeah, and this goes beyond commodities. We grew up in an era of globalization where we thought that trade would rise much faster than economic growth. But for the first time in a generation now, trade is growing slower than economic growth, has virtually stagnated over the past years or so. So you got deglobalization taking place and this big revolt against the establishment going on everywhere. And I think these are two very powerful factors which explained what happened in UK on Friday.
Let me add another D to this debate. Donald Trump, a real possibility, you think, Ruchir?
Yeah, I think that we can't rule that out. As I said, there's an anti-establishment wave that's running in the world. The only thing I find about Donald Trump, that at this time last year, the probability of him winning the election was 100 to 1. Today, the betting markets, or whatever they were totally wrong with Brexit, but let's just assume that they're onto something here. Today, the probability is about 35–40%. So there's a dramatic increase in the probability. If a figure like Donald Trump is rising so rapidly in a country, in any emerging market, you would end up getting a virtual run on the currency, a panic in the financial markets. It's not happening in the United States.
And that's because you believe that the institutions in the U.S. have enough checks and balances.
That's right. So I think that in the United States, it's almost moved to a post-democratic stage, which is that the institutions there are so powerful and there's so many checks and balances that for one leader to come and make a difference is extremely limited. Even with like Obama, the people who speak to him or in his interviews, he keeps expressing his frustration on how he just can't get more done because of a Republican Congress. But whatever, the checks and balances are so powerful in that country that for one leader to come and make a difference is just not there. Whereas in any developing country, the institutions are so weak, typically that one person can make a huge difference to what happens in that country. So that's the big difference, I'd say, between a Donald Trump rising there and other places.
Let me ask you about where you actually see hope today, Richard, as you look at your 10 parameters and your 10 rules. Surprising results, I might add, and I think it would surprise a lot of people in this room as well. Countries like Pakistan, Bangladesh, that's where you actually see hope today.
Well, I think my entire system is to try and predict whether thing is going to surprise on the upside and which countries are going to do well. And despite the fact that I may sort of sound a bit critical about India, if you objectively rank the rules on India, and it's very difficult to get any country which will rank well on all the rules, India ranks okay currently because we said the 4-4-3. There are 4 rules on which India ranks well. Inflation's come off in the price of onions. You have the fact that the debt levels haven't gone up much at a time when global debt levels have increased. So on some of these metrics, India is looking better. Even in the quality, the good thing about, and which is visible today, is that one of the rules I have is on good and bad billionaires. And the fact
we have plenty in this room.
Yeah, but but the fact that we are once again seeing in the last few years a rise of so-called good billionaires after the fact that from the second half of the 2000s in India, we had rampant crony capitalism and the rise of so-called many bad billionaires. It's the balance. And I think that that is something which is positive about India also, which has changed. So overall I feel okay about India, just the fact that we have to stop deluding ourselves that we are growing at 7 to 8%. And accept the fact that at a time when growth is lower everywhere, a 5 to 6% growth rate is what we have, and that's what we're growing at. But I think South Asia in general to me is looking okay. Bangladesh because of what it's doing on the manufactured exports. And Pakistan was a sort of favorite cover story about the most dangerous place in the world 4 to 5 years ago. And there is still, which is very wrong with Pakistan, but the margin things are beginning to turn in Pakistan as well, with investment and consumer spending in particular picking up strongly. So South Asia to me looks okay. I think in the developed world, I still remain optimistic on the United States and Germany. I think that Eastern Europe to me is, you know, people ask me that of the middle income countries today, which countries have the best probability of breaking out and becoming developed countries? I think Eastern Europe has the best probability of that, with Poland, Czech, Romania, those countries, with a lot going for them. They have the sweet spot in Europe. They don't have a common currency and are yet part of the customs union. I find that's the sweet spot which should benefit them. And then in East Asia, there are many other places which I like Philippines, Indonesia, I think are doing relatively okay. So that for me is where I see hope in these regions and clusters. But the key thing here is these 10 rules are there, and some people can have subjective interpretations of that. Some are pretty hard that you can't have subjective, like on politics, a circle of life. Where should we rank India on that? That is a huge debate. We can have an entire session on that with people sort of saying like things across the spectrum. Some will say, yes, they've done very well. Some are very disappointed. But mostly I'd say that you find people in the middle of the road, incremental reform, and that's India's standard.
Okay. Before we end, Ruchir, you know, as you look at 2016 and where we stand today, the world is plagued with uncertainty, added uncertainty on account of the Brexit vote. We don't know whether this is going to eventually mean the unraveling of the EU or not. We don't know if there's going to be a second referendum or not. I think all of that is up in the air at this point in time. But are there more risks to global recovery today than they were perhaps before the Brexit vote?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think like it's the Brexit vote. The fact is that this is an aging cycle. That even though it's been a very weak recovery, we're in the 8th year now of a global economic recovery. And the history of the world is that recessions follow expansions just like nights follow day. And that once every 8 years, there's been a global recession on average. There's no science to this, but on average. So this is an aging cycle. But to me, I think from an Indian perspective, the early reaction's quite telling. That if you look at the Brexit vote, the reaction here hasn't been so severe.
No.
On the other hand, when China stumbled, you know, like in August last year and again in Jan-Feb this year, the reaction was much greater. So I would say that if you're looking for risks out there, watch East rather than West. That the fact that the next global recession, I think, will be made in China, just like everything else is these days. And I think that's something which we have to keep an eye out for. And because there's been such a massive pickup in debt in China, and that has usually not been a good sort of harbinger of things to come.
Okay, Ruchir, I'm going to end by, you know, we've been running promos on social media saying that Ruchir is going to be here at the Young Turks Summit speaking to us about his new book. And a lot of people actually wrote in saying or suggesting that Prime Minister Modi should consider you for Raghuram Rajan's position at the Reserve Bank of India.
Well, I mean, these are obviously not my well-wishers, but this is the first time I've heard about this.
I'm
I mean, like,
you.
so I have no idea.
Would you consider coming back? I'm not for the Reserve Bank's post. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But I'm saying, would you consider coming back to India?
You know, like the one comparative advantage I've had, whether it's in school or college, there were always people who were much brighter and got better marks and stuff. The one comparative advantage I had was at an early age, I knew exactly what I wanted to do, which is that I wanted to be a writer and I wanted to be an investor. I got that right very soon. And I have to say, there's nothing else that I want to do but to continue doing that.
Well, congratulations, Ruchir. Thank you very much for joining us here at the Young Turks Summit, for taking us through your book. We hope there's a third, and we hope that you continue to write and invest. Thank you very much for your time and for joining us here. Ladies and gentlemen, Ruchir Sharma, a big round of applause, please.
Thank you so much, Ruchir. Shireen would request you to give away our token of appreciation. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause for Ruchir Sharma. Thank you, sir. We've now come to the end of the 6th Young Turks Summit, and before we let you go, I would like to take a quick minute to thank our gift partners from the Young Turks family: Raw Mango, Napa Dori, Forest Essentials, We Resort, Gift XOXO, Urban Ladder, Urban Clack, Chumbak for designing a brand new logo. Tina.
This is Ruchir Sharma in conversation with our managing editor Shireen Bhan. Ruchir is more of an unconventional investor. You know, when the world was going after China, saying that China's growth story will be indefinite and perhaps infinite, Ruchir Sharma was in fact the first one saying that no, hang on, considering the kind of debt China was accumulating, the end of their growth momentum was pretty nearby, and that's exactly what has happened. So in a sense, he's been vindicated, and now, of course, he's become a celebrated author as well. Do get his copy on the Rise and Fall of Nations and the 11 rule matrix that he's introduced. Well, we've had a long day here. We've been live programming for over 12 hours. We've had a multiple number of guests from different industries, different entrepreneurs. Even the government was very, very well represented. Minister of State for Finance, Mr. Jayant Sinha, was here as part of the Young Turks conclave. In fact, he was there a couple of hours ago, and this was his message to all the entrepreneurs who had congregated here today. Take a look.
It's very exciting to see how much you have accomplished, how you've grown and matured, the wonderful work that Shireen, you and your team have done, obviously the wonderful work that all the entrepreneurs have done over the last 15 years, and you've been part of that overall story. Now, as Vijay was saying, we have reached a point in our own development as a country and in terms of our economy where we can legitimately aspire now to having a $100 billion market cap startup company. Now, it's very exciting to be here this evening with the founders of Infosys, because Infosys today is a $40 billion market cap company, and it's very, very inspiring, I think, for all of us to see that our entrepreneurial ecosystem is now capable of creating companies, generating companies that are worth $1 billion, $10 billion, $40 billion. But if we really have to power India's economic growth, if we really have to become the entrepreneurial engine for the next 6 billion, just like the US is the entrepreneurial engine for the top 1 billion people on the planet, we have to create entirely new industries in India. And new industries like electric two-wheelers. So if Tesla is creating the electric four-wheeler market in the US, why can't we in India create an entirely new industry, which is an electric two-wheeler industry? Why can't we in India create waste management solutions that are designed for our villages, that are compact waste management solutions? Why can't we come up with desalination plants or water purification plants that can work at the village level or can work at the mohalla level? These are the kinds of industries, entirely new industries, that we need to create here in India. And if we create it in India and scale it up in India, friends, just like you all are doing, I'm sure that those solutions, those industries will thrive in Nigeria, in Indonesia, in Vietnam, in Egypt, in Bolivia, and around the world.
Well, quite the inspirational speech there by the Minister of State for Finance, Mr. Jayant Sinha, who was giving the government's point of view in that Young Turks conflict. We need to quickly slip into a break now here on this live show, but on the other side, we'll get you a very, very special chat where Shireen caught up with the 6 co-founders of Infosys who, for the first time, congregated on a public platform in over a decade. You do not want to miss this. Stay tuned, we'll be back in just a moment.
My message would be that sustainability of a business is most important. And I think that for a business to be sustainable, at the end of the day, it's about how strong the cash flows are that it generates. So valuation from the point of view of monetizing is one part of it. But at the end of the day, that valuation is only temporary if the business itself can't stand on its own 2 feet.
I think there's been a remarkable transformation. What Shireen and the rest of the crew at TV18 did was to plow a lonely furrow, and the field is now full and vibrant and bountiful. The harvest is huge. In the last 3-4 years, we've seen an upsurge of entrepreneurship. India has more than 20,000 startups now. We've created $80 billion of value. 325,000 people are employed. Last year, we had 5,000 startups, of which 1,200 got funded. Next 10 years, we'll have more than 100,000 startups, and we believe they'll create 500 billion plus of value and employ 3.25 million people, and they're going to solve India's problem. The last generation solved the world's problem, but they're going to solve India's problem.
Market timing is I think the hidden challenge for all entrepreneurs, is that many people have great ideas, but do they have the idea at the time when the business is going to take off? Uber being a great example of that.
Even 5 years ago, 6 years ago, most of the companies that came for funding had a business model predicated on success, on being global. Today, most of them have a business model which is predicated success domestic, which is very good, because what you see happening with globalization, it's under severe threat. We need to have companies that will succeed on the domestic market.
Is very bullish on India. It is the fastest growing market for us in Asia in terms of both users and revenue. So we're very excited about India, and that's why I'm here. That's why we're spending time here, investing in the market. We want to make sure that Twitter is fully utilized by users and by businesses across the country.
We first were looking at utility payments, recharges, bill payments, and so on. And once we were dominating there, we then launched third-party payments, and then we launched offline payments, and now we're going to launch banks. So somewhere, if you notice, this is not because that we've addressed one market. It is because we've addressed continuously newer market and businesses. So if you were to ask me, I think the problem for us is that can we continue to win over new markets where newer kind of customers' expectations are coming or not, instead of trying to say whether the market has their depth or not.
Startup support of this government is very good. They have a startup policy, and I know they have made a lot of changes to the policy that make it even more congenial for startups. There may be a few issues which iSpirit has talked about, but by and large, I think it's a very positive trend, because only entrepreneurships and platforms and aggregating small companies is going to get us the employment and jobs that we need.